I think these are really important conversations and topics, and I really appreciate everybody's insight. I want to shift the conversation to something that we've kind of alluded to. It's this movement that we've had in newer treatments and newer treatment options for both kids and adults with Lennox-Gastaut and Dravet syndrome. But before we do, Ian, I want you to comment a little bit about medical cannabis as a broad topic and how that's really just taken over a lot of our conversations.
Sure. So medical cannabis doesn't have a legal definition or a medical definition per se. It simply speaks to the intent behind giving a cannabis-derived product to a patient. And if you're talking about medical cannabis, you have a medical intent. I think, in my experience, one very confusing point for patients is that there are multiple ways in which you can access something derived from cannabis. And in the way that I think about it is that there's two very different ways, and probably the first division of the ways to think about it is that you have a pharmaceutical product, which comes from the cannabis plant, or you have a vernacular product or kind of a dispensary product which has been made available through a state legalization process. And those are very different because of the regulatory framework in which they are provided. Obviously, the pharmaceutical products are provided through the FDA framework and are medications just like all the other medications we've been talking about, like valproic acid or levetiracetam. Whereas the dispensary products are unregulated and are essentially sold as food supplements and don't have as much regulation or batch-to-batch consistency. And so I worry personally a whole lot more about those products. We all know how frustrating epilepsy is due to the variability of the disease. You can have a good day, you can have a bad day, you can have a good month, you can have a bad month, and it's just up and down, and we get frustrated by how hard it is to predict and know what's causing what. And with a dispensary product, that problem is just magnified because now you have one of your treatment agents which has potentially some variability. So for that reason, it's an important discussion to have with your doctor about, is there a pharmaceutical form of cannabis which is reasonable for my child's epilepsy?
Speaking of the pharmaceutical formulations of products or compounds that come from cannabis, we have one now in a purified plant-based cannabidiol product. Elizabeth, let's talk about that. How does it work? Why does it work? Where is it used and indicated now?
So I think that this is an incredibly important and very interesting story, the whole development of CBD. And I think largely this whole story is driven by the epilepsy patient community, which I think is very powerful. And I think years ago, I became involved with it, I think many of us did, because the increasing anecdotal reports of CBD being effective in the treatment of epilepsy. And my involvement with all this actually started with an anecdote as well. A patient of mine from California who actually had come to us for dietary therapy was the first child, actually. Parents kind of connected with this company, GW Pharma in the UK, who had a product in clinical trials, 50% THC, 50% CBD, named Sativex for MS, spasticity, and pain. They contacted this company because they knew the company had some preclinical work looking at cannabidiol in the treatment of epilepsy. So their son Sam was patient number one who tried Epidiolex in 2013. And that pretty much launched, as you know, kind of initially the expanded access program where a group of us got together with GW in a dark room in New York. Now in 2013, kind of discussing, was this an effective treatment option for our patients? Was it safe and well tolerated? And at that point started children on purified CBD or Epidiolex. We started our first 5 years ago now. And as you know, kind of what happened then, the development program, first expanded access program saw that it could be effective, was fairly well tolerated, and then the company filed INDs to do RCTs in both Dravet and LGS. And as you know, now all two trials in Dravet, 2 trials in LGS have all reported very positive results, all showed very pretty good tolerability. So it's been an incredible story. And so I think we do know now with the FDA approval that this is an effective treatment for many of our patients. Interestingly, the other conversation I was having with my colleagues recently is we try very hard to use the generic name or chemical names of medications and not the brand names. This is one where I find myself feeling it's important to use the brand name of Epidiolex. Because parents come in, you can see CBD everywhere. And since CBD is not regulated, to say I use CBD without specifying what it is, I think it's probably important here to acknowledge that this is a pharmaceutical product that's purified CBD, not an extract enriched in CBD. Interesting. I think we're still trying to figure out how it works. I think we know it has a different mechanism of action. It's not a sodium channel modulator. I think the best hypothesis now is it modulates a G protein receptor, GPR55, that we know plays a role in neuronal excitability. It also probably plays a role in TRPV1 ion channels. So, and probably like most of our effective medications, it probably has a couple of different mechanisms of action. But importantly, it's clear that it has a different mechanism of action, and it's also clear that it has, I believe, a favorable side effect profile when you compare it to some of our other medications. I agree with Eric. I use a lot of Felbutol, but to sit down and talk about relatively side effect profiles of several of our current existing anticonvulsant medications, CBD, I think, is very favorable.
And you alluded to this, Ian also alluded to this, but Elaine, why is it important that we recommend FDA-approved products when we're treating kids with seizures?
Yeah, I think as Ian has already mentioned, the importance of consistency is essential for me. I need to know that what is being given to the child in this batch versus the batch they're going to be using next month is the same. I'm also quite a strong believer that I think CBD is very safe. I think it's well tolerated. I have a lot of concern about using THC in kids, particularly kids with cognitive issues already. I don't think they need any more. And I think a lot of the artisanal products that are out there, you just don't know how much THC is in them. We know that the Epidiolex is essentially a pure CBD form.
Yeah, I think that's right.
I think the other issue is just getting coverage for these families. I've had families that have obtained through the state supply in the state where I work, various medical marijuana products, and it is incredibly expensive for them. It is something that has not been covered by their insurance, and so now we actually have a medication that is FDA approved and can be covered by their insurance.
Eric, you wanted to comment?
Yeah, one of the things that make this product very attractive is the community sense that it's a natural treatment. And people always think about natural treatments that they don't have side effects. So I always share with them that the only reason natural treatments don't have side effects is because they were never looked for. Right. So if you don't do a strict trial to look for that, you will never know what happened. So the importance about cannabidiol, or Epidiolex, which is a very good product and safe product, is that we study it. And we know the only thing that we have to watch would be the interaction with clobazam, because we can make someone toxic on that co-medication. And we have to look at the liver enzymes, because in a small percent of people that can be elevated. That's something that if you were just trying CBD wildly, you would never know. So under the FDA and in our hands, you can make something that comes from nature safer.